Audrey. You can exit out of Discord. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a fun chat, but an important discussion today that I'm glad DragonCon is making the time to host. For our discussion today, I'm going to welcome some friends. We're going to talk a little bit. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and we're going to discuss some of the challenges of being a part of a marginalized group in digital media in the geek scene. So without further ado, I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves and tell us a little bit of what their outlet, what they're representing, what shows they have. And I'm going to start with you, Audrey, if you don't mind. How you doing today?
No problem. I'm doing great, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back here at DragonCon, even though it's virtual. I am the editor-in-chief and founder of the pop culture and entertainment site Geek Girl 30. We cover entertainment news, but with a very geeky bent. And I am also a storyteller and the LA producer of the Story Collider show.
Oh, awesome. It's nice to meet you. Our producer was very excited to see you. He said it was his first DragonCon hug ever. So
I'm honestly surprised he can remember it, to be quite honest.
Like as mentioned, he's probably only had the one hug, so it's been very memorable. But thank you for joining us, Audrey.
Thank you.
I'll kick over to Noetta. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good.
My name is I'm Noetta Harjo. I am also from Geek Girl Authority. I've been with Geek Girl for about 4 years now, and I have a column called the Indigenous Wire. It is a column dedicated to the indigenous peoples in pop culture and media. So I am excited to be here. This is my first DragonCon and it's virtual.
You know, we're going to count it. We're definitely going to count it. We thank you for joining us.
It counts, yeah.
But it just won't be the same until you come in person and see everyone. It's an amazing convention, but thank you for joining us for this one virtually. Up next, my friend Emily. How you doing?
Hi, Tony. I'm good. So I am Emily, also known as a swan named Emily across the internet. I am graphic designer, sequential illustrator. So I come from the Comic-Con side, but I'm also an art instructor. So in the last 6 months, I have been doing a lot of art instruction through Twitch and online through stuff like that, but pretty much all over the internet doing art. And yeah, and happy to be back at DragonCon for my second year. And now I've had two very different experiences with DragonCon.
My note here says artist, teacher, dancer.
Yes.
And a last minute addition, Rob, I want to thank you. I reached out to you this morning and I've been on panels with Rob, and Rob's always a pleasure. And I said, hey, do you want to jump in this one? And he was like, sure. So can you tell us about yourself, Rob?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Hi, I'm Rob Roberts, and I co-host a show called Orange Lounge Radio, which we believe is the longest running show about video games online. We started in 2002, and we've been going every week since then, celebrating 18 years this past June. We're live Sunday nights at the Voice of Geeks Network, vognetwork.com, 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. And on the show, one of the voices that I'm able to represent is the voice of the gamer, G-A-Y. MER. I live with my husband here in California, able to join you guys remote this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Are you in Southern California by any chance?
Up in Northern Sacramento.
Because it's hot.
It's very hot here today too.
It's triple. It's 115 outside.
Oh no! Yeah. I've got all the curtains pulled for a reason. Not going outside today.
Now I spent some time. I lived in Los Angeles for about 5 years, and I have to say, the heat in Atlanta and Georgia, it's the humidity. I know it's a cliche, but it's
Tony, I lived 20 years in Florida before I moved to.
Oh, wow.
So there's a different kind of heat. There's the humidity heat, and then there's the dry heat.
And they're both, you know what? I think we can agree they're both bad.
They both suck. They both suck.
So I'm gonna open up. We're gonna go round robin with the order that I introduced everyone, and this is a bit of a sensitive topic, but it's a sensitive panel. And so bear with me. I want to ask, what group do you represent? What underrepresented group do you feel you represent? And what challenges have you seen in your career, in media, in digital media, whatever realm you may play in? So Audrey, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I'll start. First, Rob, I just noticed that you had a Pulse background, and that's super cool.
Thank you.
That's pretty honest.
You know, it's funny. I saw another panelist with the same picture earlier, and I was like, well, great minds think alike. We want to be at the same place. So yeah.
And Noetta, you'll learn all about that next year. I promise.
I'll explain it to you. I represent, the female. I am a white female, so. As far as women in geekdom, what I had noticed before I started Geek Girl Authority is being taken seriously as somebody who is incredibly interested in science fiction and fantasy. I'm really into hard science fiction. I'm a big Trekkie, and it was kind of like, okay, you're the cute girl, kind of thing. And what I've noticed is I finally had to go make my own experiences and create my own website and fund that to finally get any kind of notice. And as I've aged, because I'm getting older and older, I've also noticed that men who age and they keep getting their gray hair and they keep getting asked back to panels and to do all kinds of stuff, but women have to stay a certain age and look a certain way. And with Geek Girl Authority, I really wanted to fight that. And that's why I used the name Geek Girl, because it's kind of was becoming a derogatory term as far as fake geek girls. And I was like, I want to take that back and put some power behind it. And that's why I made Geek Girl Authority. And also I struggle with some mental health issues. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I also have an anxiety disorder. And I noticed that once I started talking openly about that in my storytelling career, that people started kind of fading away from me as well. And so it's very important for me in Geek Girl Authority as well to talk about mental health, because, I'm fine, I'm okay, but it's okay to talk about mental health. And once you start talking about it, other people start talking about it. What biggest thing I love about the nerd community is a lot of us do have some struggles, and we are open with each other. And that's kind of like why we dive so deep into Tolkien or into Star Trek, is because we needed that escape and we needed that balance in our lives. And so, I think I'm rambling a bit, but there you go.
No, you're not rambling at all. I think that was awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And Noetta, I'm coming to you next, but what always baffles me is it is a very inclusive and open community, but there's still plenty of issues, like you said. And sometimes I personally can't wrap my head. It's like, is it good and open, or are there issues? And I think there's both. So yeah. Noetta, yourself, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. Yes. Of course, female. I am Indigenous. I am a member of the Osage Nation, also descended from the Seminole and the Muskogee Creek people. So our struggles right now have been, or for a long time, have been just being visible. For Native Americans and First Nations people, we are seen as people of the past or some kind of supernatural being. So it's really hard to be seen as a person of the future, or even a person as a modern day person. So, and those are mainly the struggles that we're having right now. And with the independent film circuit, that's being remedied, but not everybody's seeing those independent films. So I'm really hoping that, this renaissance that we feel like has begun is going to really break down those stereotypes and showcase a different side of being Indigenous in this world. So.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I couldn't agree more. And I've never heard it that way, that it's a forgotten group of people, or you're right. People think it's a history book, like, Indigenous people, that's in a book, and that's clearly not the case. So again, Thank you for sharing. Rob.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm happy to represent that on my show, Orange Lounge Radio. I make no, apologies for who I am. It's part of my life, but I do also recognize, that, as a white dude, I am granted certain privileges in that regard. So I do see myself as part of the community to really try to stick up for other voices within that same community. I know maybe on or on my show, I don't always necessarily get a lot of trans individuals that are on the show, but I know that is part of the community that is constantly under attack, especially with some of the things that have happened in the world with changes in laws and so forth. I do feel a need to, defend my brothers and sisters in that community as well, best I can, by setting an example, since I am in that community, removing certain words from my vocabulary that others in a video game environment might feel free to wield freely and things like that. And trying to stick up for those folks wherever I can. I see us all in it together.
That's awesome, Rob. Thank you. Naru, the nerd guru, in comments said, progress is infinite. And that was in a response to, are things good? Is there a problem? It's both. And the progress, just keep making progress. And I think that was a great quote. And Emily, I'm going to share, because we're personal friends. I met Emily at DragonCon last year and know she's an artist. And me and everyone else on the digital media track, we immediately were like, you got to get on Twitch. You got to make a podcast. You got to record it. You got to do this. And in chatting, she said, well, sometimes as a woman, it's not as easy. You can't just pop on. There's going to be garbage. So can you share your story a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm coming from the Comic-Con world. So I've worked as, a professional artist for about 12 years now. I've done graphic design. I've done sequential illustration. So I've lived in that boys club of Comic-Con, which I have been very, very lucky, and I'm aware of that because I grew up at the firehouse with my dad. I've always been one of the boys. So that mentality and kind of that group didn't intimidate me. It just challenged me. So if I had people who were kind of being like, oh, well, you say you like Batman, but do you know 75 years of the history of Batman? I was like, no, but I watched the animated show and that was awesome. So you should be happy that I'm here and enjoying this thing that you like. Okay, bye. But it's reaffirming when I meet people like the digital media track who are so interested in my story or interested in having me be a part of the group and encourage me and want me there. And honestly, even at times are willing to lend an ear when, like I said to you, Tony, when I was worried about perception of being on Twitch. And I've always been very careful about my public persona at Comic-Con, but live on stream, that's a whole separate thing. And making sure that I was presenting myself the way I wanted to be seen, but also that I was protecting myself and my personal life versus my professional life and all of those things. And it can be complicated and it can be stressful and it can be daunting. And there are times when it is tough to not be driven away because of that fear. But stuff like this, panels like this, conversations like this make it's important to me. And I refuse to let them win as a terrible challenge thing. It's like, no, I can do this. You might have beaten me down for a day, but you're not going to beat me down forever.
If I can interject, I think you brought up a really good, thank you, Tony, a really good point is when you said the thing about Batman. I think women are held to a higher standard in the nerd community where we're expected to know everything instead of knowing one thing. Like I run a website and we have Noetta can attest to this. We have some hardcore gamers on our site. I'm not one of them, but they have a space there. I know, I was at Comic-Con one time and I had a little Star Trek jumper on, like old school Star Trek jumper. And these people stopped me and they wanted me to ask a question on camera. And I was like, okay. And I used to do a lot of comedy when I was in my 20s. And I realized as they were talking to me, they were setting me up. They're like, they asked me a really strange question about the original series. And I said, because they thought they had me. I was like, why are you asking me that? And they were just like, well, can you answer it? I said, why are you asking me that? I think you're trying to set me up. You're asking me a question about the original series. Why don't you ask me something about Next Gen, DS9, or Voyager? I gotcha, but this is not cool. And
yeah.
So it sucks, but that was like 10 years ago. And I do see things changing, but yes. The person quoted, progress is infinite. We're always going to be working on it.
Yeah.
And, that's one of those things when you don't see it, it's easy to believe, oh, that doesn't happen. Because I've personally never experienced that, but I've heard from so many people time and time and time again, that is the case. You can't help but believe it, even if you haven't experienced it. I don't know anything about classic Trek, so I wouldn't be able to answer those questions either.
And if I could say, Tony, that's a huge thing right there that you said it exactly, is that you haven't personally experienced, but all it took was me telling you that it had happened for you to be like, oh, okay, that sucks. And that right there is a humongous part of the progress. It's, you heard what we were saying and you now take that information and move forward with it. And that's where I'm seeing the positives. And that's where, the talk of allies come in, and it's having people hear you.
Yeah, Noetta, maybe you can speak on this. She said in the beginning, talking about Native Americans and Indigenous peoples, that we're always seen as supernatural. We're always, you'll find us in fiction as the people, in this other kind of plane and stuff like that. And having her come to Geek Girl Authority, I've even, in a very kind way, just by talking through her experiences, I'm kind of like what you were saying, Tony. It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Where just by what Noetta writes for the site and what she says in our chat rooms, like, I've learned a lot, Well, I don't know if you've noticed that, Noetta, but
well, it's always good.
Oh, please go ahead, Noetta.
I was going to say, it's always good to have somebody who will listen to you and will take into consideration your experiences, because not everybody does that, even in non-geek world. So that's what I really like about being with the Geek Girl Authority, is that she listens, everybody listens and take into consideration everybody's experiences.
And it's so easy once you know how to do it, but it can be a challenge. And I appreciate the kind words, Emily, but it took me some time to get better and come around and realize, just because that's not what I'm seeing, isn't what's happening. So thank you all. Rob was on a panel earlier today. I was watching him, and he was asked a question, and I stole it because I thought it was a great question. So Rob, I'll start with you. And the question is, how do you deal with the haters, the trolls, the a-holes, I'll say, to keep it clean? You know who they are.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to get them, especially when you're an underrepresented, marginalized group. Rob, how do you deal with that?
What the trolls and what the haters want is they want a reaction. And kind of like in that story that Audrey was telling just a second ago, when they put the camera in her face, what were they looking for? They were looking to try to get her to do something on camera, like a big reaction that they could use. And she didn't give it to them. And that is my take on it too. You do not give them the attention that they seek. And I've had trolls and I've had haters. It's just part of putting yourself out there on the internet. They'll come into the chat, even having like a medium presence on Twitch. As I say, I don't have a big presence. I don't have a tiny presence, but I have a medium presence on Twitch. And even just having that medium presence, people will come in and try to say horrible things in your chat room, use words that they wouldn't say in front of their parents, and those sorts of things. And what they want is attention, and I refuse to give them that attention. And so while I'm moving on to the next gaming story without skipping a heartbeat, my incredible mod team is taking out the trash, so to speak, because I don't have time for it.
That's awesome.
Emily, you're relatively new to the streaming and the online. Hopefully you haven't seen it, but if you have, or if it will happen, unfortunately, how do you plan to deal with that?
Well, and it's been great, again, using you guys as resources. And a big thing of everybody I talked to was exactly what Rob said, hyping up the mods, is having, not only going through, I made sure that in my Twitch stream, I made a lot of words unavailable, but also having somebody just kind of babysit my stream. And because I work in customer service and teaching for some of my job, I'm always going to try and deflect it first and not directly confront someone. And that's not always good. And so it's kind of a balancing, and I'm trying to be cognizant of how I'm handling certain people's feedback or what they're saying and going from there. But it can be incredibly difficult not to rise to that conflict. And I will admit that I have kind of a fiery temper sometimes, and it's hard not to just get mad and say things back to them. But it's the being able to then turn off my stream or step away and put them in the darkness where they belong as trolls. I was like, no, you go back under the bridge where you live, and you don't get to take up space in my head. You aren't paying rent in here. You don't get to live here for free. And does it always work? Absolutely not. And there are still times where, I will have many glasses of wine for dinner as a balm to that. But it's reminding myself, and it is, again, and it's being able to reach out to other people in the community and having that support and being like, hey, could you sit in on my panel or on my Twitch stream and just chat with me and just be a positive person there? Because I'll focus on you and I'll ignore everybody else. And, for now, I think that works. And hopefully as I encounter other things and hopefully maybe dodge some nastiness, then we'll go from there and we'll reassess.
Just one other thing to kind of add, just remember, there's that song in that musical Rent. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but there's a song that goes 525,600 minutes, right? Just remember, I don't owe you one damn minute. So, and that's what I say to haters on Twitter. That's what I say to haters on Twitch and so forth. I don't owe you one of those damn minutes. Because there's so many people out there that feel like they are obligated, or you must give them time because you share a similar nerd thing in common, or you have this thing. No, I don't know you one.
I love that.
I do. I love it, Rob.
Yeah.
The challenge is, for those that know me, I'm pretty thick-skinned. I just don't care. I feel like Rob is that way. Audrey, I don't know you well, but I get the impression you don't take a lot of garbage.
I've got this weird duality thing going. I do present that way, but I am a delicate flower, and I think I've learned to put up this thick skin just because I've had to do that. Also, I'm a very tall woman, which is very unusual. I'm 6 feet tall, so no matter where I go, I'm noticed whether I want to be or not. So, but I think both what Emily and Rob are saying just right. The thing about you can't take up that space in my head is so important. From simple things. I was doing this one streaming show it was for this streaming network, and I always have an inhaler with me because I have asthma, and it's just such a nerd thing. It couldn't be. It's so obvious. And so someone on the show asked, well, what does it feel like when you take albuterol? I said, oh, it makes me feel speedy. It makes me feel really awake. And immediately there's a comment just bashing me. That's not true, blah, blah, blah. And it's just and I realized I wanted to react, but I was like, what the fuck? What the frack?
Exactly that.
What the frack? You don't know my experiences. So I have to walk away and do some breathing and come back, because if I react in that moment, and with Geek Girl Authority, Noetta's a senior contributor and co-editor over there. And so we've talked about comments before, and we have a no tolerance policy where whoever's the editor on duty, or if somebody sees it in the middle of the night and there's a nasty comment, it's just gone. And if somebody feels kind of weird, is it nasty or is it just me? Then we have a group, we have a thread on Slack where we can talk about it each other, but we just right away, nope, no time. We're not big on comments on our website anyway, just because of the policing. But when they come up on social media, it's just blocked, done. Our mission is joy, and our mission is kindness at Geek Girl Authority. It's very, very important mission for us. And so, no tolerance policy, right, Noetta?
Exactly. I guess that's one thing that I've struggled with in being in the digital media world, because it is so easy just to jump into that. But then I started kind of looking at things well, maybe this person just doesn't know, especially coming from an Indigenous perspective, they really don't know anything about our culture, and maybe they're trying to understand. So, I try now, I will say, ask a question that kind of gives a feel if they are willing to learn or not. If they're willing to learn my perspective, right, and how I see things. But if they're not, then it's just blocking. And I just block. So
I know exactly what she's saying. I wanted to jump on a comment real quick, and that her comment leads into a question I already was wondering. But the comment came from Drazna in chat, and she said, it's constantly baffling to me when I hear someone talk about a bad experience, and then someone else says, well, I haven't experienced that. And her comment says, well, good for you. But just because you haven't doesn't mean I did. And that aligns with what Audrey was just saying. Well, for me, albuterol does whatever. Well, that's not you. Everybody knows, medicine is different for everybody, and body chemistry, it's basic science. So it's just baffling for someone to say, well, no, that's not what it does. I've never met you. I don't know you. I don't know who you are, but I know how this chemical interacts with you. People are crazy. But what all of the conversation led me to is this is a personal question of mine that I'm struggling with. And the struggle is, I don't want to argue with idiots, but I want to help people that sincerely want to learn, to Noetta's point. So how do you all, I'll let anyone jump in on this. How do you balance that? Because lately I've been, and I didn't share, I'm interracial. I'm half Black, I'm half Italian. And so depending on the day, people expect me to speak on certain things. And there's some days it's just with a lot of Black Lives Matter issues. It's like, in my opinion, is, well, you don't want to learn. So why should I try? But then I feel like I'm failing, so just anyone's thoughts on that. How do you, I know it's a long question, but how do you balance?
Well, for me, I hope I'm answering what you're asking here. What I've learned, like Black Lives Matter, I'm gonna listen. I couldn't be more white, obviously, and so I'm not going to assume anyone else's perspective. Now, I am very honest on my site and in my storytelling about my mental health. It has been a struggle. I have had problems in my life because of my chemistry in my head, and I can speak to that. And so if you will listen, I'll share my experience with you because it affects everybody differently. And I will be an expert on that for me. And I don't mind saying I'm an expert on that because I know a lot about obsessive compulsive disorder and I know a lot about anxiety disorder. But I'm not going to lecture anyone on anything that Noetta writes about in her Indigenous Wire. I'm not going to lecture anyone except on being an ally, I can tell you about my mental health and I can tell you about sexism from my personal experiences, but I will be an ally to everything else. And it's important to listen. And I think with social media and the internet, we have learned and safety behind the keyboard, and we tend to react quickly before we listen. And that's what I would share with anybody is especially with like my nieces and nephews and my stepdaughter is learning to listen before you react.
And I think that's brilliant. I know the challenge I run into is there's a lot of people that choose not to listen. And I think that's where you have to decide who you're talking to. And Noetta, you touched on that. Do they want to learn, about being Indigenous, about your experiences? So how, I guess my question, how do you gauge if there's someone who wants to learn?
Well, I know for me, with a couple of times where I've had just a singular comment or someone, it is for a small community. If I know it's someone I'm going to interact with in the future, are they worth my time? Which sounds selfish, but my time is valuable and it's something I can't get back. So is it worth it to me to take this moment to teach this person? And if it's someone who will continue to be in my community, absolutely. And I will take the time to send them a private message that's not, it's beyond outside eyes. It's just the two of us. And I can say, hey, this comment that you made upset me, or here's why this didn't sit right. And the hope then is what they say back to me is, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And I don't need the apology. I want you to know why. And if you're worth my time to explain that, then absolutely. But that one-on-one is important. And obviously, as you talk to strangers, that's a little bit more difficult, but especially for, small steps in educating people who are close to me, who then might either speak on my behalf or speak in a world that I exist in. I know that I took the time and I did what I could do for the headspace that I had, for as much as I could give out of myself. I took the time to address that one and taught them what I could.
Well, you were an ally with that, which is really great. I think what we run into now, and we see a lot on social media, is people being very performative with who they choose to be allies for. And it takes, when I was more open about my mental health a few years ago, I noticed some people like stepping back from me because they didn't understand it. Yet they were the first to get on stage and say something like, we need to all normalize mental health and we're all fine. Let's help each other. It will get better, all that kind of stuff. And I think people are still learning how to be, and I know I'm overusing the word ally, but I think people are still learning how to do it correctly, you know.
And it's being able to say you were wrong. Like there are times where I thought I was being helpful, or I thought I was doing the right thing, and I wasn't. And it sucks, and it hurts, and it feels yucky, and you feel crummy, and you're sad now, and you're, you know, totally introspective, and it's like, oh God, I've done everything wrong, and just burn it all down. But it took me, you know, I was like, okay, I had to take that, and I had to learn, and I had to realize that I'm going to be wrong. I'm going to keep being wrong, but I'm going to force myself to listen, even if it's uncomfortable, and to get better. And to try and always be better.
And Emily,
yeah, and
I
it's
think
not
Rob,
easy. I'm sorry.
No, please. I was gonna say, I think Rob would agree with you with it's not selfish. Your time, you know, you don't owe it to anyone.
Yeah, no. When she said that, I was like, "Yep, that's it." But no, and it's I think you really hit on something, Emily, about the being an ally means admitting you may not have done everything right before, and you may have made some mistakes. You may have done some things wrong. And, tying it back to this podcasting universe, and I've been doing this a very long time, as you guys know, since 2002. And a question I commonly get is, how do I go back and listen to episode 1? And how do I go back and listen to episode 2? And you can find them. They're out there. I'm proud of cohesively this show that we've put together over the years, but I'm also the first to admit, if you go back and listen to those old episodes, there may be things, there may be content, there may be stuff that we've done that I would not have done now in this context, and some of the things that I've learned since then. And I think that is important too, is to be able to, because we do have voices that we put out there, we do have, and so forth, we have to be able to be some of the first to make those corrections and set an example for our audience that, you know what, I may have said, because I heard it on an episode of Project Runway, I may have said hot tea mess as an expression like they used to do on that show. But now in 2020, Rob Roberts knows that, you know what, that word is hurtful to some people, and that is a word that I'm taking out of my vocabulary, and I'm not going to use on this show to describe a stinking video game of all things. So I think actions like that are very important. And, for maybe those people out there that are like, well, I happen to be cis, het, white, what can I contribute in this space? I think that they're, setting an example for other people like that is so important.
Thank you, Ryan. And I'm right there with you. I'm 41 years old. So in those years, I have said things that you're right, I wouldn't say today. And I think as anyone who's trying to just become a better person, you learn and you grow and constantly work towards it. Like they said, the progress is infinite. Audrey, we cut you off earlier. You had something?
I did.
Well,
I can't remember.
Well, let me ask you this, Audrey. You openly spoke about, I believe you said OCD. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have yourself one of these cubes?
No, I don't. Is that to like focus?
It's my OCD. Oh, even Charles has, but yeah, it's a fidget cube where, the spinners were popular for a while, but I keep it on my desk for these conversations and podcasting. And I'm always,
I use my pop socket.
That's
my thing, my pop socket on my phone. Geek Girl Authority, by the way, know how to look like that. I'll be sending you one.
Send me one of those.
Yeah, I got one.
Well, let me ask. Well, where can you just buy those? Like, can you get them somewhere?
Here's what I did. So I ordered these for Christmas for gifts for Geek Girl Authority, and I ordered the I guess you stick it on your car so you can, the thing that you put it in so it sticks on your car, right? So when I got the package, it was 100 of the things that you stick on your car and only 3 of these. I think I did something wrong in the numbers, and I was just So if you guys need something for your car, let me know. But it would, yeah.
With all due respect, I was gonna say that's a long way to say you didn't get Noetta a pop socket. What I'm hearing.
I have three, so I will send you one.
Yet she didn't get her one yet.
Not
it's in the mail.
So I just yesterday I did a Black Nerds panel, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's the same subject matter. It really is. It's a marginalized group struggling for representation. It's really one and the same. And a question came up from Mike, who, a lot of us here are podcasters, content creators. And so for people who are trying to do things right, for people that want more representation, what's the best way to go about getting people without playing into quote unquote tokenism? I think people that are concerned about tokenism are usually the allies, but it's a concern. So just around the room, how would you recommend people go about reaching out and getting more representation in a sensitive manner?
Well, I will start just because I've been doing Geek Girl Authority for 7 years now. We've been live for 6 years. And at first, my first call to get writers, I just put a call out. And most of the women, as Noetta can attest to, are white, straight women. And I don't know what to do. How, like you said, I don't want it to be tokenism or anything like that. But I think we are going to be putting out the call to writers probably in the next couple months. And what I've done, and whether or not this was the right choice, you guys can tell me, we have used our artwork. We have like images that we're going to put out, come write for Geek Girl Authority, and with female astronauts or female gamers and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that it isn't just white women that you see on those cards, and also that it's also, and not just women as well, because we also have non-female identifying writers at Geek Girl Authority as well. But I think, I don't know if this is the right way, but in subtle ways, we're going to be putting out that call to writers. I'm interested in what the rest of you folks have to say. I mean, we have a whole section on our site, Representation Matters. We have Indigenous Wire. We have a mental health section. But I have had a hard time getting writers because it's also, we don't really pay much, because it's all self-funded and everything like that. So it's been hard attracting folks. So I'm curious what other people have to say for that.
You just flipped the script on me, Audrey. I don't get asked the questions.
I was asking everybody.
I was like, that's a good question.
Tony, I am so sorry because I've been a moderator for so long too.
No,
that I'm so.
No, I think that's amazing, and I think it's a great question that I think, and I know Rob's going to jump in and try to answer, that I think people want to hear. It's the same question, just kind of spun. So. It's a great question. Rob, what were you going to say?
I just said the same thing, basically.
Doing my best to take on the issue of tokenism. The only reason I'm a little shy to follow up is because I don't want to make it sound like Audrey isn't doing these things, because I'm confident that she is, as well as, the people that she works with on her site. I think one of the biggest things and believe me, I have found myself to be the token gay guy in many types of situations, in the past. And, to somebody that maybe would be asking me that type of question, like, how do I avoid making you like the token? I would kind of say, like, well, how many voices are you listening to? How many voices are you consuming on a regular basis? If I am your token gay friend, let me ask that question. Why don't you have other gay friends? Why don't you maybe join other Twitch streaming communities from gay content creators? You know what? Why stop there? Why not include lesbian, bisexual, transgender? You know where I'm going with this. The list goes on and on. Make sure that you are incorporating in what you consume a little bit of everything. And I think that is very important as well. And then kind of like to tie on to that too, I think it is also very important if you're trying to get people like, I run a podcast network, and I'm all about trying to get all sorts of voices. I want people, all these voices, out on the network. I want them all. And I think a big part of that is creating a welcoming environment and creating that environment that is welcoming so that people aren't shy to jump in and voice something and feel like, and it kind of goes back to something that was said early on. A similar situation many of us has faced is that when we try to prove our geek credit, the first thing we are is challenged. And I think it's important to create an environment where you're not challenged. Just by saying you're a geek, guess what? You're a geek and you are welcome here at the table as long as you know how to respect everyone and do everything and all of that. And so that's kind of like my very long-winded answer to that question. Again, I have the most confidence Audrey is creating a welcoming environment and has a diverse portfolio and everything and is doing all these things. Sometimes it's just trying to attract more people is just sometimes hard to do. And I'm not sure I have the answer on how do we get more people in here and say, this is a place for you. And maybe, I don't know, is there maybe a way that you could get a guest contributions or things like that? I really don't know. And again, I'm sure these are all things that are already being explored. It's just, especially with the state of the world right now, I think things are just tough.
Yep.
Rob, I expected you to have the perfect answer to a very difficult question. You let me down. I thought you were going to solve the entire problem, but
we have 2 strikes now.
Maybe that's because I can only speak for one marginalized community, and I bet you other communities may have their own answer as well.
And Rob, I really do think it was a great answer. I'm going to give you a hard time. I reached out to get you just so I could give you a hard time. But I'm
not putting the cat on stream, Tony.
I was going to save that for later. But I truly do think that was a great answer. And as a podcaster, I'm taking notes like, oh, okay, just to make it a comfortable environment for everyone. And Noetta, I want to ask you, since you joined Geek Girl Authority, if you don't mind sharing, I'm assuming you felt comfortable. So what about it made you feel comfortable to join? And this may help answer Audrey's question for getting new writers.
Is it pop sockets, Noetta? Is it pop?
It was the pop sockets. Yes.
Okay. Well, clearly it wasn't that. Yeah.
That is the draw. No, it was really. The draw for me was being able to talk about my fandoms, being able to write about those fandoms and geeking out online instead of just, in front of the TV and yelling at it. So that was the real draw for me. And then for the first, year and a half, Audrey, that's all I did was write breaking news and recaps and there was no special pieces. And then one day I wanted to write a piece dedicated to Wes Studi, who an Indigenous actor who's been in almost 100 films. So I approached Audrey and I was like, I want to write this piece. And it wasn't meant to be a whole column whenever I wrote it. I just wanted to dedicate a piece to Wes Studi. That time he had been on the Oscars and he was the first Indigenous person that had been featured on the Oscars since 1973. So it was a really big deal for us to see him on there. And I was just like, I need to write something. And so she was like, yeah, let's talk about this though. And so that's kind of when Indigenerd kind of was created from that. So the real draw was just being able to voice, my excitement and my fandom and then turning that into something that was a little bit more identifiable to me and the people that I see day to day. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad it was a welcoming environment. And I mean, I clearly she's sitting right here, but I'm glad Audrey allowed you to, take that story and run with it. And I just love Indigenerd.
Well,
I think it's so clever.
Oh, thank you.
I need to say that Noetta's given me a little too much credit for this. I mean, she did come to me with an article about Wes Studi, but I think couched in there, Noetta, you were already kind of thinking about this column, and that's why I said, let's talk. Maybe you didn't know it yet. Maybe in what you were pitching me, you didn't realize that this really had legs, and it was a really great way to focus a lot of your fandom. But she did all the hard work on that. I just published a space where she was able to do it.
But that's the thing, like, that's the point I really wanted to make. Exactly what you're saying is you had the platform for it, and you opened up the platform to her for it. And that's, again, I'm seeing so much more of this coming from the Comic-Con world and seeing it now in the digital media world. But that was the thing. It was finding independent artists or trans artists or anybody in a marginalized community, artists who are making their own comics and shouting them out. And it was, I'm tagging on a couple because there's some amazing things that have been said, but with what Rob was saying, it was, okay, so I like this art. So now I'm going to follow them. And what do they follow? What do they like? And I'm going to share it. And I'm going to show you, like, no, I just found this super cool artist. I have nothing to do with it, but I want more people to know about it. So for my 10 Twitter followers, now you guys need to know, because this is a new thing. And it's finding people to be willing to lift other people up and put them on a platform, give them a voice. And even if you can't support them monetarily, like, that's, I feel like there are people who are afraid, like, I can't contribute to a Kickstarter or something. I can't. I was like, that's fine. Share it. Share it with your friends, because
absolutely,
you joke about, being paid in exposure bucks. If you have a line to somebody who doesn't have a huge reach or a huge community, and you might have even just another community that they wouldn't ever reach, that already is helping. And you can do so much with using a platform to get the voice out there. And
for May the 4th, we did a big day it was a Star Wars day. So we made sure that our whole front page had Star Wars articles on it. Favorite female characters from Star Wars, all kinds of things. And Noetta did an article about Native American Star Wars art. And there you go, Emily. I mean, it was this whole new platform, and she showcased artists from all over the country and also Canada who had this amazing art. And it's one of our most trafficked posts of the entire year.
I love it.
Because it's just beautiful. The art's beautiful, and it's all Star Wars.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And those are things I would never know existed. And I'm actually going to go check it out now, because I'm like, I've never even heard of that. And so
I'll send you the link.
Please. And all sincerity, please do.
Yeah.
I have to cut us off. I really wish a topic like this, we easily can talk for 2 hours. I could talk to each of you for an hour. There's so much. And we're going to do it again next year. We're going to keep the conversation going, but I want us to stop so we can go around the room and we can hear where everyone can find everyone's stuff. So Noetta's drinking. I'll go to Rob Roberts.
Well, thanks again so much for having me. This is great. And I learned some things too. I am Rob Roberts, and you can listen to my show, Orange Lounge Radio, that I do with my buddies every Sunday night at the Voice of Geeks Network. That's vognetwork.com, or here on Twitch at VOG Network. And if you want to follow me personally, I am on Twitter at Mr. Rob Roberts, Mr. Rob Roberts. And I'm also on Twitch as well under my own channel, just Rob Roberts. Thank you so much.
And you can follow Mr. Smush on Instagram. That's it. That's the one mention.
I did yesterday. I started following.
Yay.
That's
he
Rob's
says meow meow. Thank you.
Emily, where can we find you?
I am across the internet at a swan named Emily. So Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, all of those. I will hopefully be getting back into Twitch art streams and doing that. But yeah, like I said, I'm an instructor, I'm an artist. So I always love seeing awesome art, either that you create or other people create. So share cool art with me, chat with me on any of those platforms, and yeah, come say hi.
I'll remind you to get back on the stream. I'm going to bug you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Noetta, where can we find you?
Well, as always, you can find me at geekgirlauthority.com, and the Indigenous Wire is under Representation Matters. But I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at NetaBear13.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Last but not least, of course, Audrey, where can we find you?
Once again, to echo Noetta, please visit geekgirlauthority.com. You'll find a lot of great writers on that site. And you can follow me, Audrey Kearns, Kearns, on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Audrey Kearns with an underscore after the S, because some other lady got Audrey Kearns first. She's in Ireland. I did stalk her to see who she was. And also on Twitter, Geek Girl Authority is at Geek Girl Off, because authority would have taken up too many letters. And on Instagram, Geek Girl Authority.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I have to add before we wrap up, thank you first off to you all. It's we had the panel got handed off and there was a little hullaboo, but you guys worked it out. You came together. Rob jumped on last minute. Rob, thank you so much.
Happy to. Thank you.
Also, I have to thank our tech crews, volunteers. There's a lot of people behind the scenes making this crazy Dragon Con virtual thing happen. It's a crazy year. And then last but not least, it was Chris Wisdom who put this panel together. He had to drop out for his own reasons. I want to thank him for putting it together. And I just got to sit in and get the limelight. So thanks, Chris, for that. So thank you all again. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to leave. You can find me at TonyPHenderson.com. But we have way more programming. We have programming going on till midnight, and we're going to do it all again tomorrow. So don't go anywhere. Stick around. And for us on the panel, we're going to do the corporate Zoom wave. And thank you all. Seriously, thank you all so much.